Hi, I'm Madison Miner with Protect Our Kids, and I am here today having an interview with a mom whose daughter in Orange Unified School District had issue in her class in 6th grade where she was singled out as a child that was not vaccinated amongst her peers. So with me today is Loes. Loes, welcome to Protect Our Kids. Her name is Loes Sleenhof Lavola Pichella, and she's here to tell her story. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Madison, for having me here today and letting me have a voice. It's been a little bit of a rough weekend for me.
Yeah, I can understand. Absolutely.
Yes.
So I have a couple questions and we can just, have a conversation about this today. But when did your daughter first tell you about being separated in her class?
She actually called me Thursday while she was walking home from school. I was still driving home from work, and she was very upset and had told me that, they had a discussion in class about being vaccinated. And that's where it all kind of started to unfold. I told her, let me get home. We'll talk about it then. And then when we got home, my husband and I, we sat her down and we talked with her. And that's when the story developed. And, it was a very uncomfortable situation for my daughter to experience.
I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure. So how did it first transpire? What happened at first in her class? Was it in the morning, in the afternoon?
No, it was actually right before school was about to end. The teacher had sat the kids down and she said, we need to discuss something important today. And my daughter shared with me that she thought it was something going to be exciting, like a new fundraiser, or they were going to maybe discuss a field trip. That was the first thing that was going through her mind. And so when the teacher was like, okay, we're going to talk about vaccines, she was a little bit taken back. From there, it just escalated. She started speaking to the kids and she started mentioning random names. She told those names, these are my vaccinated kids. So the kids that she had mentioned were the vaccinated kids, and they were allowed to stay in their seat. Then she said, with the rest of you children, you are my unvaccinated kids, and we need you to get up from your desk and stand in a single line.
Wow. So she just had them line up in the side of the classroom.
Had them line up. Basically, divide the kids from the vaccinated kids to the unvaccinated kids. She then had one of the kids hand out a flyer, again, to the unvaccinated kids. And from there, she went on telling about how if they didn't get vaccinated soon enough, they were not allowed to have their classes, their elective classes chosen for 7th grade.
Wow. And do we even know the validity of that statement? Do we know if that's the case?
Well, coincidentally, I was at my daughter's soon-to-be 7th grade school on Wednesday, and this did happen on Thursday. So it happened the day after we went and toured the campus, met with the principal. I had gone to parent night about a week before, where we were given forms so we could choose our elective classes. And the tour was basically going from one class to the next and seeing what the elective classes were. When we were done with that tour, we were told that we had to have those forms in by March 10th. Which is just right around the corner.
Sure.
Much sooner than the first day of school, let's say in August. So that day we chose our elective classes. We were told to choose our top 2 and then from there choose an additional 2 in case we did not get into our first 2, but that we were guaranteed those classes as our elective. So maybe not our first 2 would be our, chosen ones, but definitely 3 and 4 we would get into. Nothing was ever made clear to me that my child had to be vaccinated to turn in those elective choices.
Right. That was going to be my next question. So they never once brought up the idea of getting vaccinated. And again, these are vaccines that are typical for 7th grade, for entering 7th grade. What vaccines are they that they're requiring them to get?
I believe it was the Tdap booster. And then I can't remember exactly the second name, but those are not due until they start 7th grade. The other thing that I want to mention here, I am not an anti-vaxxer. My daughter has been vaccinated. My husband and I, we've lived overseas with our families. We lived in Dubai. We traveled to India, third world countries with our children, to where we know how important vaccines can be in certain situations. So I do want to make that clear to your audience that I'm not here as an anti-vaxxer. I'm here basically stating that my daughter's privacy was basically shared with her peers, her classmates.
Yeah.
The other issue I have with it is that this teacher almost used it as a weapon against my child for not being vaccinated. Maybe not to her schedule. Maybe she's not vaccinated, but to my schedule, my daughter is vaccinated. So for her to be called out as an unvaccinated child is completely a misinterpretation of like where my daughter is.
Yeah.
And then to also tell the children, to almost scare them. I mean, you're talking about 12-year-old little kids who they look up to their teacher. So if a teacher says that you're doing something wrong, they take it very personal.
Of course.
They take it to heart. And my daughter, she was very worried, very scared that she wasn't going to get into her classes that she so wanted to get into. We had just toured the day before. So it was very upsetting.
Yeah, of course. And how did she feel? Did she express to you how she felt about being singled out and called unvaccinated in front of her peers? How did that make her feel?
It didn't make her feel comfortable. She almost felt like she wanted to defend herself, but didn't know how to. And then the main thing is that, when the kids were brought to the front of the classroom to stand in a line, she almost felt like she had to explain herself, but didn't know how to. And that felt very just concerning to her. And so when she was walking home and she was telling me this, she almost felt like she couldn't defend herself in her classroom by trying to explain to her, but, oh no, my vaccines aren't, she doesn't want to go into detail with her peer sitting next to her trying to explain that she's maybe vaccinated, maybe not. But as a child, I did explain to her, you did everything right. You're not in trouble, because she kept thinking that. She kept wondering, Mommy, am I in trouble? Did I do something wrong? Am I going to get punished for not being vaccinated? Am I not going to get my classes? All of these questions were totally running through her mind to where, my husband and I had to tell her, you didn't do anything wrong.
Right.
You actually did everything right by coming to us.
The children in her class that are,
right,
that have their up-to-date vaccines or not. I mean, and does she know their birthdays? Because
right,
perhaps some of them were younger.
Correct.
And simply just weren't due because they go to the doctor, closer to their birth date versus.
And that was my point with my daughter. I said, you're not even unvaccinated. You are actually vaccinated. You're not due. You're not ready. And I determine that as your parent when you're ready for those vaccines, not your teacher to threaten you with what you're going to get in life if you are vaccinated or not vaccinated. That is not for her to decide or even discuss with my child.
Right.
And that's where I feel violated, right? Because again, I teach my children to respect your teachers, mm-hmm, respect your peers, respect your adults. That's how I've raised my child, even my husband. We're very, let's say, all about respect, how
Sure.
we respect other people. And so when somebody that she's supposed to look up to her says these things and makes her feel like she's less than, she takes that really to heart.
Of course. Yeah, I could see that. I mean, especially being 12 and impressionable, and
yeah, she's
kind of on the cusp of, feeling like her teacher is the most trustworthy person in the world. And then when you get to being, more of a teenager, you start kind of feeling the opposite sometimes about
Correct.
Authority.
Right.
So I could see her being very anxious about wanting to please her teacher and not say anything to oppose what her teacher was saying about her vaccination status.
Well, and you make a good point, because the whole thing is I teach my child to respect, but now I'm having to teach my children, your teacher overstepped. Your teacher did disrespect you. Your teacher did violate your privacy. Your teacher scared you when it wasn't needed to be done. All of those things now, where does that bring her further in life? Now she's probably going to hold a little grudge, maybe to the next teacher. Who knows? But I feel as a child, everything that happens in day-to-day life shapes you for when you're older.
Absolutely.
And these are situations our children, as parents, we shouldn't have to explain. And that did hurt, because my child loves and always has loved her teachers. But now she's left with, missing school on Friday because I did not feel it was a safe environment for her until I kind of got my mind in the right headspace. I did send her to school this morning with specific instructions. And so that does change things, her outlook on teachers, on school.
Of course.
Yeah.
Were there other, you mentioned there were a handful of other students that were singled out as vaccinated or unvaccinated. Mm-hmm. Did you hear from or speak to any other parents that maybe their child also came home and talked about this?
So I did reach out to just a few parents. I did not think it was my place, or nor was I ready to go down the list and call every single parent. The parents that I'm close with, I did call them, and they were very shocked.
So their student didn't come home from school that day like your daughter and say, this was what just happened. It's really strange, Mom. What do I do?
Correct. So with those parents, they were like, well, we didn't hear anything yet, but let me check. One, I was on the phone while she was asking her daughter. Same story was told, but, again, that daughter hadn't said anything to her mom. Right. Another family, I spoke to the mom. She was like, I don't think I would have ever known about this. And they were very upset about it. So a lot of times I feel that this is happening because, in my mind, I'm like, is it happening more? And my child's the only one that's speaking up and feels comfortable speaking with me about things like this. Or, are teachers taking advantage of our children because they're young? They don't know right from wrong. Maybe they don't express their uncomfortableness or the fact that they were violated, and it just gets kind of swept under the rug. But both parents that I did speak to, two of them that were in her class, had no idea about the situation. The third one had, heard a little bit from another parent, but when I spoke to her, she had no idea to the extent that the kids were separated from vaccinated to unvaccinated.
Well, and having been on the school board, I feel like, unfortunately, this is not uncommon, where I've heard stories from parents reaching out to me. You yourself reached out to me, hearing stories from parents where they no longer feel like they have this trust of the teacher in their classroom, of their students. And I think that's not all teachers. Obviously, there's wonderful teachers out there, but unfortunately, I hear about this more often than not lately, and it's very disturbing.
Right.
Because we shouldn't have to have this kind of a conversation. We shouldn't be in here talking about this.
Totally.
Because we should be able to trust when our student is in a classroom that teacher has their best interest in mind.
Right. I do want to add, I did speak to another parent who had this same teacher last year, and asked her, did anything ever happen with vaccines or talk about vaccines? She said, oh, yeah. She said last year when her daughter came home from school, she was very shooken up. Her daughter was told by this same teacher that if she did not get the COVID vaccine, she would be putting her family or parents at risk, especially if they had diabetes or heart conditions. Well, my best friend is diabetic.
Oh, wow.
And so
that must have been terrifying for that little girl.
Terrifying.
Yeah.
And it really upset my friend. But, the fact that these teachers think it's okay to discuss anything when it comes to vaccines or to get vaccinated is not what they're there for. Now, if they're giving talking off topic, about health or whatever, or there's these vaccines or whatever, but your opinion is not needed when it comes to what our children need.
Well, and similarly, you wouldn't expect them to give that advice because they're not medical professionals.
Correct.
That's not their job. Their job is teaching math and literacy and history and science, not giving a lecture on medical, medical advice. That just doesn't, to me, that's not the same thing.
Well, and, I'm in the not medical field, but let's just say I deal with patients and privacy rights. And so we're trained, right? HIPAA. HIPAA is a big thing. We're not able to talk about any of our patients or their medical anything, not even mention their name if we're communicating via text, anything like that. So I do know the school boards are held accountable to FERPA, right? And that's to protect all of our children and their privacy. And in this situation, that was completely ignored.
Yeah. I'm even going back to, how did the teacher even know the status of her students' medical records? That that doesn't seem like something they would keep in their file drawers in their classroom.
Correct.
That seems like she actually saw it.
Correct. So I did reach out to a few other friends who are teachers in Orange Unified School District, ask them, do you know which kids are vaccinated and unvaccinated? And each teacher said, absolutely not. We're not privy to that information. So with that, I did ask the principal this morning, where did this teacher get this information from?
The principal at your daughter's school.
Yes.
You asked. Okay.
So, again, I did keep my daughters home from school on Friday. Kind of wanted to catch my breath, wanted to make sure they felt safe, wanted to make sure that they understood moving forward the rights they have. When they went to school this morning, I made sure to tell them, listen, nobody is to speak to you regarding this incident without my presence. If anybody does bring up anything regarding vaccines, you immediately leave the classroom and I will come and pick you up. So when I dropped them off this morning, I made sure to see the principal, dropped them off. They went to class. And then I made sure he knew what line had been crossed and to definitely not overstep again.
Was he aware of the entirety of the situation?
He was. One of the parents that I had reached out to Thursday evening did go to the school on Friday, and he did mention that. He didn't tell me which parent it was, but I knew which parent it was.
And the parent told him about the situation?
Correct.
So the teacher didn't bring that up to her principal?
So I guess there was a discussion. I don't know the discussion. I know there was a discussion between the teacher, the principal, and that family. You know, we're talking about a teacher that's been around for a long time.
Not a first year teacher.
No.
Okay.
By any means, no. They're talking about a teacher. I don't want to say she's been there the longest by any means, but I mean, she's been there for quite some time. So I think played it off to where she didn't know if she was doing anything wrong. Now, again, we go back to common sense as far as privacy, and you can't expose my child's records to anybody, especially in class with her peers,
right? And
calling her out on something.
Yeah, that seems like very personal information that she disclosed. Mm-hmm. And so what was the principal's response to you this morning and over the whole situation? What are the next steps for this principal?
I wanted him to know where I was coming from, right? So I wanted to make it very clear. My kids are at school today. Nobody is allowed to talk to them regarding this matter. I am still basically taking in what has still happened. I'm still communicating with people on what I need to do next. I did let him know that I would be going to the superintendent's office today because I think this is definitely something above him that needs to be addressed. So I did make all those things clear. He did call me about half an hour, 45 minutes after I left and asked if him and I and my daughter could have a conversation tomorrow morning so that he could question her on what had happened. And I'm not in agreement to that. My daughter doesn't need to be questioned by them at this time. My daughter has written a statement to me expressing what had happened, and I will share that with them when it's appropriate. But I definitely don't think my daughter needs to have a meeting with a principal regarding this. Again, the principal is a figure to her that is intimidating, right? I mean, so I don't need her to be questioned by anybody at the school right now.
Right. Well, and going back to what the teacher, you made mention that the teacher in conversation said that she was shocked that this was even an issue. You know, being on the school board, again, we passed training after training after training for these teachers and needed training, right, for them to get classroom awareness skills, to get new strategies for how they taught, for, health and safety. Mm-hmm. Having them, be ready if there's an active shooter on campus. Things like that we're constantly coming across for us to approve, for consent items. And so not that I know the entirety of this situation, but I feel like a teacher, especially not a first-year teacher, mm-hmm. if this teacher's been there for as long as it seems like she has, that she would know that and in this instance, FERPA is the violation, that she would know that that's a FERPA violation to disclose a student's medical information to anybody And so did it seem like this was an intentional discrimination of your daughter, or did it seem like a misunderstanding?
No, to me, I feel like it was an attack against my daughter because she wasn't vaccinated. Here's the thing, and I've thought about it a lot over the weekend. Why would a teacher ever want to make a kid feel uncomfortable, right? And how could you not? If you have your own children, if you're a grandmother, if you know children, you know what makes them comfortable and what makes them uncomfortable. How by any means could you possibly think that this would make a child feel safe and comfortable? And no matter how you would look at it, no matter which angle you take on it, there's no way to say, oh, okay, by doing what I did was a good thing for that child.
Right.
Anybody with common sense knows this in any spectrum, right? Regarding whatever field you're in. I mean, we're employers. Everything is about Privacy Act and keeping things confidential. So how could you possibly think that this was okay? Even with what were your intentions? Right. And then not just only exposing who's vaccinated or unvaccinated, why take it a step further and threaten the kids that are unvaccinated that they won't be getting what they want if they don't get vaccinated? Right. So you're literally using their medical records as a weapon against them. And to me, that is completely wrong. We're talking about little kids, right, who don't know any better. Teacher doesn't know my backstory. The teacher doesn't know my child's medical records to the full extent. Maybe she can't get that vaccine. Maybe something's happened in my personal life where I look different at vaccines now. Who knows? But for her to, make her stand up in front of a room and be accused or made feel less than is wrong. Classrooms are supposed to be our safe space. Right. No, I agree. I mean, even at home with my 4 children, if I'm going to discipline them, the lazy mom in me would do it just shouting across the house. But if I'm going to actually impact my child, I'll pull them aside privately and have a conversation with them. Hey, I'm concerned about this. Right. Let's fix this. Let's remedy this. And this is how you can do it. So I agree with you. I think singling them out in front of the entire classroom that's humiliating. It is. I would be, especially as a 12-year-old where you're starting to really, be uncomfortable sometimes in your own skin. Right. That would be very difficult. I can imagine. Right. And again, we're not talking about a teacher that is new to teaching, maybe is, modernized. I don't know. We're talking about a teacher that has known right from wrong for a long time. Yeah. And it's very alarming. So you said that you were planning on going to talk to the superintendent. Do you intend to file a formal complaint against this teacher, against the school? What's your next steps? I do. I'm working on that. And, I definitely want to make sure that this doesn't happen to any other child in any other school district. I want to make sure that this doesn't happen again. It's one of those things where, as a parent, I would never think that this would happen to my child. Never. Right. So I definitely want to protect, future kids from this happening. Yeah. Do you believe that the school violated your parental rights over your child? I do. Again, my child and my medical beliefs and my child, again, I have 3 daughters. I feel that they don't have the right to speak to my children about what they need to be doing, about setting up a doctor's appointment. Make sure that doctor's appointment is set up on Wednesday so you have half day so you don't miss your class. I mean, those discussions, not appropriate with my child. Right. Yeah. No, I agree with you. Mm-hmm. Have you had a chance to consult with a lawyer, with any legal authority regarding this FERPA violation? I'd rather not get into that as much today. I could probably come back later and dig a little deeper on that, and I'm sure I will, but let's just say I'm not quite done yet. Right. And what changes would you like to see implemented in schools, in Orange Unified specifically, since that's where your students go, in order to protect other kids regarding, FERPA violations or just general discomfort in their classrooms? Well, I mean, I think if these rules, let's say these laws are being broken or misused, definitely more training. I mean, we could sit here and say, oh, it's common sense. And if it's not, then where's the Orange Unified School District's take on this? Are they training their teachers properly? Are they being retrained? Are they being, I do. I have to go through training every single year for my profession. But, you know, I definitely don't want any other child getting violated like my child was.
So what would be your advice to parents that might be facing similar violations of their parental rights?
Right. So I speak very freely and openly with my kids about what's right and what's wrong, especially when it comes to making them feel uncomfortable or even making them feel happy. So I think my biggest take on this was the parents that I have reached out to, they didn't know about it.
Right.
And again, I go back to the kids just not knowing that
that was a violation.
That was a violation, right? And some kids, they might feel uncomfortable, but they don't know why they're feeling uncomfortable. So I definitely always think it's important, make your kids feel home is a safe space. Regardless of what it is, the child needs to express to you as a parent, hey, this made me feel weird. Is that normal? You know, they made me feel scared. Is that normal? And sometimes I'm like, you know, it's okay. You know?
Yeah.
But at least when it's not okay, as a parent, we know what we need to do, and we can, you know, handle the situation. We can make them feel like they didn't do anything wrong. Because again, I go back to how my daughter felt Thursday. It was really hard as a parent to calm her down. She felt like she really did something wrong, and that was hard.
And I commend you for that, because I feel like that's such a hard thing as a parent. We want our kids to tell us the truth, but then they kind of stop telling us if we discipline them for that. So I feel like that's so wonderful that you have that positive relationship with your daughters for them to be able to trust you with information that, you know, was uncomfortable for them.
Right.
That's a big deal.
Yeah.
I know with my kids, when they come home from school, I tell them, I say, hey, I want you to be the first person to tell me, for example, if you got in trouble at school.
Right.
If your teacher is the first one to tell me, then you're in double trouble. But if you tell me before your teacher, we'll deal with the situation. We'll talk about it. You will write them a very nice letter. Like I'm talking 3 paragraphs, 4 sentences each. But, you know, that's my way of hopefully creating a trust so that when my kids are a little bit older, like yours are, they'll understand, bring me the information because I'm on your team. I'm here to support you. And let's move forward from there.
Right.
Well, that's great that you have that relationship with your daughters. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
How has this experience changed your view of, and I know you've had a tumultuous year altogether, but all of that building up to now this moment, that kind of the straw that broke the camel's back, what is your view now of the school system and of the district that your kids are attending?
This year's been quite a bit of a letdown, right? And I'm talking about my middle daughter. So I even have one younger. And just how much has changed over the last few years. I mean, I'm talking about, you know, I have friends who have kids that are 14, 15, and my daughter's 12, so they've only been out of elementary school for a couple of years, and how much has changed already, that's very alarming at how quick things are going downhill. I also want to say, you know, I have had a couple issues in the past just this year, and my daughter's the good kid on campus, right? She's the kid that doesn't want to hurt anybody's feelings. She leads with kindness, all of these things. And when I'm starting to see what's happening is she's the one that's not protected. It's the other kids in school that are bad, that are causing things to happen, that are saying things. These kids are the ones being protected, and my child is not. So it's been rough. If you told me 2 years ago, I loved our school. I really did. I thought it was a great school. As parents, we felt heard. We felt like it was going in the right path, and it's just not anymore. I feel like the teachers are very protected. The bad kids are very protected. And then us, you know, the kids that are trying really hard to stay in the right path are the ones kind of being shoved to the side.
Sounds like it, especially in this situation and knowing your history. What would you like the administrators and policymakers to know and to learn from your experience moving forward?
Well, I definitely think moving forward, we need to address and readdress what teachers' roles are with our kids, right? Let's go back to the basics. The fact that these teachers feel that they can have conversations with our children that are inappropriate or not their place is very alarming to me, because I feel the more you let them do this, the further they're going to push those conversations. And we definitely need to address that situation. Let them know this is a hard no, this is a yes, these are the conversations that could be had, these are the conversations that are off limits. And I think a lot of that has to do with sexuality, with health, with certain things that happen behind closed doors in family life need to be left to the family to take on, not the teachers.
No, I agree with you completely. I am a staunch advocate for parent rights and making sure that parents are the primary nurturers and caregivers and even educators.
Right.
And yes, we entrust our kids to these teachers, but when they consistently violate those rights, especially for your example for this school year, it's creating this mistrust in the system. And unfortunately for you, you still have a younger child that has to come up through this school. Have you thought about her future when it comes to attending this school, or what?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And I mean, that's a struggle, right? Because my daughter's been going to this school since kindergarten, and she's in 6th grade. Part of me on Friday wanted to never send her back again. Yeah. Because that hurts, right? I feel not only was she lied to, but as a parent, the trust there is gone. But I also have to respect that my daughter is graduating from 6th grade here in about 4 short months. We all know how quick time goes. And she should have the right to, graduate with her friends that she's known since kindergarten. So I will let her finish this school year out. Unfortunately for my younger one, who might have friends at school, that might look a little different for her next year.
And I don't blame you.
Yeah.
I don't. Well, Loes, thank you. Thank you for being here. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry that we have to have this conversation, and I'm sorry that your family is experiencing this letdown. Yeah. It shouldn't happen. It should never have happened. And I'm hopeful, honestly. I am very hopeful that your situation and what you're going to do and put forth, in the public view, I hope that this will educate these teachers that are with our precious children, that they will learn, these administrators will learn that us parents are not going to stand for it. Right. And so I'm grateful for your courage to be on here. I'm grateful that you are taking a stand, because unfortunately I think there's a majority of parents that just go with the flow and go along with it. And good for you for standing up for your kid, but also for my kids and all the other children that maybe don't have an advocate willing and ready to fight for them.
No, and thank you, Madison. Boundaries need to be set, and our children need to be protected. And that's all I can ask, moving forward. But we definitely need to address these type of topics to make sure they don't happen again.
Yeah, absolutely.
But thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Loes, for being on today. Thank you for joining us on Protect Our Kids. Loes is not alone. I know there's other parents out there. Being on the school board, I'd hear from so many of you that had concerns and had stories to tell, and we want to hear about it. Go to our website, protectourkids.org, POK.org. We have social media outlets, Instagram, X. We have YouTube videos that'll help equip you and instruct you on how you can protect your kids and how you can know your rights. And I would love to hear from you. My email is madison@pok.org. So please share your story. I would love to be able to come alongside you and help advocate for your family and for your children. Until next time, see you then.